LPT. When cooking something greasy, use aluminum foil pressed into your sink drain as a catch cup. This is likely common knowledge at this point, but just in case, when cooking something that produces grease, bacon, hamburger, etc., when you go to dump the grease, take a small sheet of aluminum foil and stuff it in your sink drain catch to make a cup. Dump the grease in it, pinch up the sides and throw it away. Helps avoid melted garbage bags major messes. Also, I think with certain types of grease you can add other ingredients like peanut butter and seeds and make your own suet for birds. Definitely confirm the type of grease you're using is okay for avian consumption before doing that, though. Edit. Apparently a glass jar metal tin by the stove is the norm by many. Here in the Northeast US I've never seen that done in any households I've been to. I'll give it a try. I just let it cool. Then use a paper towel to pour most of it into the trash. Then I make sure I put some soap in to cut the remaining grease to make sure it won't clog. Every time this gets posted I cringe at the thought of wasting aluminum foil like that. And why use your sink drain, where you risk grease going down the drain, rather than just a cup set inside a bowl? Or better yet, something biodegradable or already trash? Awful LPT. Better LPT. Keep empty soup can. Spoon grease into can and put in freezer. Repeat until full. Then discard and start a new grease can. Yeah. No. That's what glass jars are for. I keep a jam jar at all times to fill with stuff like bacon grease. When it is full, it gets tossed. Context Op has been pouring grease down their drains and thought this was a big brain solution to a problem most people don't have. That's what my jar of grease is for. What I do is let the grease cool a bit, then I put it in a plastic container and into the freezer it goes. When it fills up I use the proper ways to dispose of it. No grease ever goes near the sink. The real LPT is to not pour grease down drains, guys. This is why pickle jars are still made high-quality lids that don't leak. Save the bacon grease until it's full and fry your own hot wings with it. I know someone will say it's not healthy, but believe me, it's worth the risk. I grew up in New England. Everyone had a jar or can for grease. Why are you throwing away bacon grease? I pour it in a small bowl, put it in the fridge, scoop it out, and then compost it or save it for cooking in the near future. If you live in a warmer climate and are worried about it melting, put it on a bed of paper towel. Trash if your area doesn't compost. Foil isn't biodegradable and seems like a waste. The problem with this tip is no one explains how bad the grease actually is for your drain. Can anyone explain? Happens if I put it down the drain times? I can't think of anything I've cooked in recent memory that produces so much grease I can't just let it cool while eating and then wipe it out with a paper towel after the meal. You're cracking nuts with a sledgehammer here. Or just use 2 sheets of paper towels and tongs and soak it up right from the pan. More environmentally friendly and easier. Everyone have a grease cup on their stove. WTF. I save the grease and use paper towels, brown bags to wipe the pans clean. Then the grease and or towels can be used to start campfires. Charcoal for grilling or bonfires. I just save a glass jar, say from pickles, and pour the fat from any food into it. Once full, you simply throw it out. This is just wasteful. My mom would pour used grease into an old milk carton for disposal. The only thing worse than this method are all the people saying, "Peesh, I rent lol" down the drain. Pour the cooled grease into a coffee can or deli container, seal, and discard in trash can. I use an old glass jar tin can. Usually have one laying about somewhere. Let it cool. Throw the whole thing away. Just put the pan out in the yard after you cook and bears ravens can take care of it without hurting the pipes. I pour mine into a bowl of water. Then fridge it. The grease comes out in a kind of solid fat puck that is easy to throw away. Just use a can of any sort. Put into old oil containers and chuck when full. We just take 2-3 paper cups stuffed inside each other and pour it in them and then into the freezer until garbage day. I pour it in a cup and put in the fridge to use later. Depending on what kind of grease. Bacon grease, pork grease makes everything taste better. Just pour it into a mug and freeze it. Like with bacon grease or whatever. Then you throw the block of frozen grease in the trash. I just tip the pan up by putting something, usually a salt shaker, under the handle. Moving the meat to the high side and letting the grease drain to the low side. After a minute or two, soak it up with a paper towel or two and toss it. YTF would anyone pour grease down the sink? Wait for it to cool. Use a paper towel to wipe it clean. Wash as normal. FYI. Never feed birds peanut butter. It is way too soft and will stick to their beaks, causing them to foul their feathers when they preen. Pouring it into a glass jar once it cools a bit is what my family has done for ages. Works well since you can use it for suet, or you can just toss it once the jar is full. Jar near the sink for all grease. Spoon it into dishes as required. If jar gets full, dump 1, 2 to 3, 4 of it in the trash. Then fill it up again. Empty when full. Cycle keeps repeating. Bacon grease is great in a pan of green beans. Am I the only one who pour the grease into a jar to refrigerate and use later like butter? Saving money on buying so much butter? Yummy bacon grease makes veggies taste even better than butter. I rent an apartment, so that's someone else's problem. Is there a life amateur tip sub? Because that is where this belongs. Edit. Oh, I thought of an even better tip. Just shape an entire skillet out of aluminum foil and cut out the sink step so you can be even more of a wasteful dumbass. I use a can opener to remove the top of a beer can and pour into that. I'm a renter, so I'm just going to let it into the drain tbh. I used to just pour grease out in a particular spot. In the yard. Behind a tree. Obviously. You can't do this if you don't have a yard. But any plastic or glass container that's been emptied, and would normally just be tossed or recycled, can be used and kept in the freezer and then tossed when it's full. If it's a small amount, it can be soaked up with a paper towel. Used aluminum foil is another option. If your local recycler doesn't recycle used aluminum foil, wasting good aluminum foil should be a last resort. I buy the flakes that basically turn oil into a gelatin and then throw it out. Very convenient when deep frying stuff. I have 2 huskies. Nothing grease fat related gets thrown out. Best idea is not to eat that greasy trash food in the first place. That grease is what accumulates in your arteries and eventually will cause a heart attack or a stroke. Good tip to keep grease out of the drains. Some of the comments are even better. Flour works really well to soak up oil, then you can just throw it in the trash. I just put aluminum foil in a cup and let it sit. There's so many LPTs I see that parents should have told them. This is one. Just goes to show we are becoming idiots with time. Less and less is being passed down. Or if you rent, just pour it down. Press it into a bowl in the sink, that way if the foil fails it doesn't go down the drain.